Hello, welcome back. Um, I'm John Choi again, and let me share the PPT so that we can continue. Well, let me repeat briefly what we have learned uh, last time, the first class. Well, this course I mentioned is about worldview studies. And I emphasized that the worldview is life because your worldview determines your life. And I explained what we are going to study or these worldviews. And I hope this course is really helpful to you. What is worldview? I try to explain through many other images like this. It is a set of presuppositions, it's kind of map, it's kind of glasses, and it's a frame of reference. And I quote one Dutch proverb, how the word water is so influential in their worldview. And their worldview has developed this kind of special construction. Now, I also have quoted two. One is from the London Heathrow Airport, one advertisement, and another quotation is from Rick Warren in his book. Also illustrated these three photos with different explanations. Again, the same image with totally different understanding and evaluation. And also, your worldview can collide with other, especially if your worldview is opposite to that of other people, especially in the history of America between Native Americans and the white pioneers. So worldview is like the motif and the vision of life. Therefore, we need to examine our own worldview. And why we think so? Because unexamined, life might end in a total failure. And I have mentioned the case of Nazism in Germany because Hitler had a very wrong worldview. He almost destroyed the whole world, and he killed more than 6 million of Jewish people and others as well. And then I explained the etymology of worldview, started by the German philosophers and also mentioned by Dutch neo-Calvinistic scholars. You can also find it in Sanskrit and also in Korean language. So worldview is not only about the view of the world as a space, but also is a view of time and history. Now, let me move on to the second part of this lecture. I want to talk about the definition and function and types of worldview. Well, first of all, the German philosopher Wilhelm Dilthey distinguished the two words, the Weltbild and Weltanschauung. Welt, excuse me, Weltbild in English is like a word picture, such as a myth or legend. It is a picture of a world at an uncivilized stage, like mythology, myth, or legend. If you know the history of Korea, we have a special legend or myth called Dangun. Dangun was a mysterious king who started the Korean dynasty. And we know the story in order to understand the worldview of Korean people. Maybe Myanmar has another myth or legend about the foundation of your country. Secondly, Weltanschauung or worldview is a little bit different. It's more concrete frame of reference. As I have explained in the previous lecture, it is a basic hypothesis about a more specific and integrated world. And you can find that there are four major questions in worldview. What are they? First of all, you can ask, how did the world all start? In other words, it's about the origin of all things. What is the ultimate origin of the world? So everybody is curious about that question, right? Secondly, you can ask, what is the most fundamental problem in the world? As you see, we have a lot of problems. There is a problem of evil. There are many problems in our society. So why are there so many problems? And what's the most basic problem? You can ask as the second question of your worldview. Thirdly, you can ask what's the most important solution to this basic and fundamental problem. You need the solution, right? You need the answer, right? It's very important. It can be a question of redemption or restoration, you can say. And fourth, you can ask what's the end of the world? Question of the final destination. What would happen at the end of this world and history? Now, if you can answer all these four major questions, you can have a very sound worldview, right? So let me move on. How other thinkers thought of worldview. Well, I mentioned already James Sire, an American author who tried to define worldview like this. I quote, worldview is a commitment, a fundamental orientation of the heart that can be expressed as a story or in a set of presuppositions, which are the assumptions may be true, partially true, or can be entirely false. Here you can see worldview is not only theoretical story or presuppositions, but it is the matter of heart, commitment, fundamental orientation, including your practice, your concrete life. See? And he further explained worldview is which we hold consciously or subconsciously, consistently or inconsistently about the basic constitution of reality. And that provides the foundation on which we live and move and have our being. Now let me move on to the second definition. I mentioned two scholars, Wolters and Benny van der Waals. Well, Albert Wolters was a professor at the Redeemer Christian College in Ontario, Canada, and he wrote a book, Creation Regained, and he defined worldview is the comprehensive framework of one's basic beliefs about things. Whereas Benny van der Waals, who was a professor at Potchefstroom University in South Africa, he said a worldview is an integrated, interpretive set of confessional perspectives on reality which underlies human activity, shapes it, motivates it, and gives it direction and meaning. Well, you can see they are not so different, but quite similar each other, isn't it? And there are some other scholars like Brian Walsh and Richard Middleton in America, and they both have published one book about the worldview, and they defined that the worldview, I quote, provides a model for the world, and at the same time, it guides the people who live in the world. So it's not only a model, but it is a guide. It's not only static, but very dynamic. And furthermore, they explained, I quote, it's a perspective that has a systematic nature as premises for the world and for life and determines the commitment and direction of all human activities. So you see the commitment, activities, worldview is a life, you see? So this means that the worldview and life are inextricably connected. They are intertwined. They are, uh, yeah, inseparably interconnected. Now, James Sire offered some contents of worldview like this. He asked these questions. First, who am I? What is my identity? Second, where am I? Where am I from? What is my origin? And third, what's the problem? I mentioned there are many problems, but what is the most ultimate problem? And fourth, then what is the solution to this problem? Right? So if you can answer these questions, you have quite a good worldview, I would say. And this can eventually be condensed into a matter of human, world, evil, and salvation. If you understand human beings, if you look at the world properly and recognize the most fundamental problems of evil and sin, you can say that you have the right view of the world. Now, Sire went furthermore to raise another seven basic questions for worldview. So let me quote. First, what is the prime reality? What is the real? Second, what's the nature of external reality around us? The very ontological and philosophical questions. Third, what is a human being? Who am I? Is a very individual question, but what is a human being is a more general question. Fourth, what happens to a person at death? What happens if I die? It's a very individual question, but what happens to a person at death? It's a very general, universal question. Fifth, is it possible to know the absolute truth? What is truth? What is the absolute truth? And can we know it? It's quite an epistemological question, you can say. And sixth, how do we know what is right and wrong? That is more moral judgment, ethical standard question, right? So we need to know what is right to do, the right thing, right? Seven, what is the meaning of human history? If you don't know the meaning of human history, maybe you live just as you want. But if you know the true meaning of human history, you will try to follow it, right? So these are very important questions to determine your worldview, said James Iyer. But Benny van der Belt from South Africa, he gave us a broad definition about worldview. First, he mentioned worldviews are comprehensive. Second, it is the way of looking at things. Third, it helps us understand and orient the world like a map, as I mentioned. Fourth, it provides an integrated view. Fifth, it's both descriptive and prescriptive. Descriptive means that you explain the world as it is, whereas prescriptive means that you should do this and that. Sixth, it demands full commitment. So worldview is closely connected with your commitment, you know. Seventh, it is typically human. Human beings have worldviews, whereas animals or other living beings have their own instincts. They cannot think, they cannot have their own worldview. Only human beings can have. Eighth is pre-scientific. It means worldview determines the direction and the contents of science that you pursue. Ninth, it is the root of action. So the worldview is the basic root of your behavior, your life as a whole. And lastly, it is a clear image of the real world, but it's not complete. It's not perfect. It's still being shaped. So I think his definition is quite broad and comprehensive. Now, let me move on to the concrete symbols of worldview. For instance, here you see the symbol of communism. Communism is a very specific worldview developed by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Later, of course, Vladimir Lenin and Joseph Stalin, and so on. And you see here, communism has this kind of special sign, special symbol. They emphasize the labor of the working class. They emphasize the revolution. That's why they like this red color. And how about the other worldview? Christianity. I'm sorry, I move back. Christian worldview has different one. Sorry. It's a cross. Of course, it emphasizes the love, sacrifice, and peace. And these two are quite different. So each worldview can be represented by a special symbol. Well, let me further explain that there are some patterns of worldview. What are they? First, a worldview like a shamanism or naturalism emphasize the nature-centered worldview. Shamanism, for instance, emphasizes that the nature has some deity. So you worship a big tree, a big rock, you worship the power of the ocean, and so on. It's very nature-oriented worldview. Whereas existentialism or postmodernism are very centered on man, human being as such, the existential context of man, or the postmodern context of human being. So they emphasize that human being is the most important subject here in this world. But there is another pattern. Finally, there are some worldviews which emphasize God-centered worldview, such as in Islam or in Christianity. Islam mentions Allah as the absolute deity, and the Christianity emphasizes God the creator, the redeemer, and the consummator, or the God of the Father, Son, and the Spirit. So you see here, worldview can be centered on nature as such, or man, human beings, or God. Now, this is the second part of my lecture here, and next time we will cover the functions of the worldview and the basic biblical worldview. So let me stop here and thank you for your attention, and we will see you next time.